Now, the International Financial Action Task Force has opted to greylist South Africa after flagging that the country was being monitored in October 2021. Last year, the global anti-money laundering body announced that South Africa needed more prosecutions and the freezing of more assets to demonstrate its compliance. For more on this developments and also the developments around Eskom, I'm joined by the former Eskom board member, who is now the CEO of Business Leadership South Africa, Mavuso. Thank you so much for making time for us, Ms. Mavuso. The finance minister warned this week that we must prepare for the possibility of being grey-listed. He must have seen it coming. What does it mean for South Africa?
Yes, he definitely must have seen it coming. And good afternoon, Clement. So it's obviously, number one, a reputational risk on the conduct of the country. I think versus the credit rating downgrade. We fall under jurisdictions, Clement, who are under increased, monitoring, which means that the country's risk has now been heightened. So we are treated as high risk as a country, and we're also going to be treated to higher scrutiny. Which therefore means now that there's going to be enhanced due diligence for South African companies, which increases the risk, which increases compliance and the administration and the red tape. It means that individuals who are actually engaging with international financial institutions in particular have a higher DD that is actually going to be conducted on them and their companies, and there's definitely going to be more scrutiny from that perspective. It also means that there's going to be reduced appetite for South African relationships that are actually going to result. It means that funding could be impacted, especially from the EU and the UK. And the EU and the UK are particularly concerning, Clement, because remember, they are our biggest trading partner as a country. So it therefore means, that these two jurisdictions, in particular EU and the UK, are going to have to immediately impose a higher risk category on South African counterparts, which may impact investment flows. And that is not good for us, because remember, the President, at the State of the Nation address, spoke about the fact that we are having an investment conference in April, or is it in May? He spoke about a new target of 2 trillion rands. If we have now been grey-listed, the impact on investment flows means that the 2 trillion rands that we're looking at getting as a country is actually not going to be realized. It also means, from a numbers perspective, about 1 to 3% of GDP could be actually wiped out from our economy. And of course, South Africa is now seriously perceived. And I don't think we are going to be seen in good light from now on. And it's yet another nail, on our coffin as a country.
I actually remember a report that was commissioned by Business Unity South Africa predicting that the country has an 85% or so chance, if I'm not mistaken, chance of joining those 23 countries on the Financial Action Task Force's grey list. Did South Africa do enough to avoid this outcome? There are people who argue that we acted a little too late. Yes, there was some legislation that was introduced, but the process, in my understanding, runs in two ways, right? You've got the legal framework and you've got the substantive changes. So yes, you can have legislation drafted, but you also need laws to be implemented and enforced at the same time.
You do, Clement. So the process began in 2019, when the peer review of South Africa's anti-money laundering and combating the financing of terrorism system were actually looked at. And the report was finally released in October 2021. But Clement, we did take too long as a country. We knew what needed to be done. There were clear recommendations that were actually given to South Africa from a technical compliance as well as from an effectiveness compliance perspective or an effectiveness assessment perspective. And of the 40 recommendations, we were only compliant with 20, and obviously from an effectiveness perspective, we were found to be critically weak on all the 11 immediate outcomes. Now, that means that from a big picture perspective, you don't comply with the 11, and from the 20, you only comply with half. we needed to immediately act when we got the report in October 2021. So we woke up too late as a country. We left this, for the 11th hour, because amending legislation takes time, but a big piece of it as well, Clement, is the fact that the main concern by FATF was that we have had the state capture project as a country, and we haven't seen anyone being sent to jail, for what happened in South Africa.
Yeah.
It therefore meant that the criminal justice system in the country is not adequate to deal with these issues. And we know, obviously, the issues that face, some of these entities that were hollowed out by the state capture project. I really don't doubt that the NPA team did their best in terms of trying to ensure that work is done. We saw people like Matsila Koko, Brian Mulife, Seabonga Gama, Makas Yoste, issued with warrants of arrest last year. But I'm afraid it was a little bit too late, and I think whatever it is that we did at the 11th hour could not save us as a country.
Yeah, and it's great to have the arrests, to have the increase in investigations, but we need to see prosecutions as well. And when I looked at the statement by this, force team, the financial task force team, they saying South Africa needs to demonstrate not only an increase in investigations, but prosecutions as well. How long is it going to take us to get out of this list? Once you are grey-listed, I think it took, if I'm not mistaken, Mauritius about 3 years to get out. For other countries, it's even longer. So how long is it going to take us to bounce back from this grey listing?
Clement, I think it took Mauritius about 20 months. So I think they were a good case, in that they focused all their attention, all their energy, all their resources in making sure that they actually get out of the grey listing. And with all that intense focus, it actually took them 20 months. So let's see, with South Africa mired in all of the controversies that were mired in, with all the problems and the challenges that we're facing as a country, with all the balls that we're actually juggling as a country, are we going to be in a position to actually put our heads down and make sure that we work tirelessly, to remove the country out of the grey listing? Will it take 20 months for South Africa, or will it actually take longer? So the ball, once again, is in our court, Clement. We can actually get ourselves out of this rut sooner rather than later. But again, it all boils down to commitment, it all boils down to implementation, it all boils down to how quickly we accelerate the actions that FATF would like to see from us between now and whenever they review us again.
Yeah, all right, let's look at the developments at Eskom now. Geez, you won't be mistaken for saying that it doesn't rain, it pours in this country. Significant developments at Eskom. I want to know from you if you think this immediate departure of Andre Dlamini from Eskom is a big loss to the entity.
Look, it does create a leadership vacuum. Not only is Andre leaving, we know Jan is leaving as well. We know a few executives have left between this time from when Andre put in his resignation. We know that it creates instability within the organization. We know that Andre is the, what was it, Clement? Was he the 11th CEO or the 10th CEO in 10 years? So that doesn't scream stability. Those are not makings of an organization that is actually trying to turn the corner. Caleb has now been put in as an interim CEO. He's going to be operating without a COO. He's going to have to find a CFO to do the work that needs to be done. With all the troubles that Eskom is facing, with all the focus and attention that is there on Eskom, you actually need as much stability as possible. The entity is in serious dire straits, even with their full executive team, doing what it needs to be. So as soon as you remove key figures and figures at the head, it does definitely hamper the operations. It does definitely hamper the efficiency and what the entity needs to do. So I think it does create destabilization, absolutely.
As someone who was on the previous board of Eskom, were you aware of the corruption allegations that this former CEO has made? And what did you do about it?
That's an interesting question. And I think this is what I've been asking myself ever since the Andre interview, to say it's amazing that people are seemingly shocked that there is corruption at Eskom. We knew all along, Clement. I don't know why this is news all of a sudden. I mean, wasn't Pravin Gordhan on record as saying that state capture still continues at Eskom? Isn't the president on record as saying that, there are issues of sabotage, there is state capture, there is malfeasance that continues at Eskom? Haven't we known all along the spades of arrest that we actually saw late last year and before, of employees being fired, of employees being arrested, of contractors, the diesel mafia, the coal mafia? Come on, these are things that have actually occupied our headlines for quite some time. So when Andre now, paints or puts color, into the frame that we knew all along, what is surprising? Eskom has never stopped being the ground zero for siphoning funds out of the state. We have known that all along. We have had media reports, which have been telling us that, the issues of Eskom, the load shedding that we're experiencing as a country is not all innocent. So why are we therefore, why is it difficult for us to reconcile what Andre is saying and what the media has actually been telling us all along? So I'm actually not shocked. There is issues that were actually raised, issues that have been taken to SCOPA, issues that the previous board has raised, in terms of where we have stopped contracts, contracts because there were contracts mired in corruption, and there were, all of these issues. All of these are issues that have actually been reported to SCOPA. It's in the public domain. We have spoken about these things, and so I'm not actually surprised. It's something that I knew all along. It's something that all of South Africa knew all along. So it's actually interesting for me, especially the feedback, or rather the response from government officials in particular, where it seems as if the concerning thing mainly for me is the insults that are actually being held, at Andre. Clement, you would expect that if you are sitting in this environment where we have all, as a country, said that Eskom is a problem, it needs our urgent attention, where the president has stood in front of us last year, July, to give us an electricity crisis plan to try and fix things from that perspective, and a line in that electricity crisis plan, Clement says, fix Eskom. What did we think that meant? We have created an entire institution in the form of NICOM to actually look at how we solve for this. This is so much of a problem that we have declared a state of disaster around it. We have seen that this is a problem, so much so that we have actually created an entire ministry behind it. Surely we knew that this thing goes deep, it goes wide, and it goes very high. So what is taboo in what Andre has said?
Fix Eskom are the two words that the president has been shouting, even to you as the previous board, to the management, for some time now. I suppose my question is, was Andre de Ruyter successful at his job, at that primary responsibility of fixing Eskom?
And you're probably going to have to look at what does fix Eskom mean? And this is a question I posed to the president, Clement, when you actually consulted the business community with this electricity crisis plan, and I saw this line of fix Eskom. And my response was, President, we're going to have to define what fix Eskom is in the context that Eskom continues to be the ground zero for siphoning funds out of the state. In the context that whenever we pour money into Eskom, probably maybe only half of it, because of what we know, because of what is in the public domain, because of the coal mafia, of the diesel mafia, of employees of Eskom that are actually mired in the crime and corruption, it means that every rand you put in Eskom, probably only 50 cents of it goes towards its intended purpose. So we're therefore going to have to define what that means. So what Andre has done is to actually say, you might be focusing the fixing of Eskom at this level. I'm telling you, as someone who has headed this institution for the past 3 years, that focusing at this level is not going to help. You're probably going to have to double click and go a little bit deeper because the foundation on which this thing is sitting is rotten. So if you want to fix Eskom, it's not going to be fixed by declaring a state of disaster. It's not going to be fixed by employing a minister of electricity. It's not going to be fixed by putting a Newcom in place. It's going to be fixed by hitting some form of a reset button. You're going to have to look deeper. You know, it's not the power stations just falling over because they're old. Yes, there is a part of that, Clement. I'm not denying that as a fact, but I'm also saying that he talks about people walking, probably I'm going to get this wrong. You know, we said it in the interview. Someone walking past, I don't know which part he spoke about, and they actually stab it with a screwdriver. You know, when it's a sharp object and it creates, we know that the load shedding that we actually have as a country is not all innocent. A lot of it has been orchestrated. It has been orchestrated so that it can trigger the procurement process of either buying coal or buying parts or buying diesel or whatever the case is. All of these things we have been told by the media. So I think that is, for us, from a business community, Andre is just actually providing light to say that as you run around, you know, and take 254 billion of this entity's debt, make sure, because if you are not going to look at the foundation, if you are not going to fix the problem from where it emanates, you know, taking the 254 billion rands of debt is a useless exercise, you know, because the foundation is going to be rotten.
Yeah, I would still want to know, Ms. Mavuso, whether you think he was a successful CEO. I think what we were robbed of was that the resignation came on the day that the board chair was supposed to do his KPIs. So I don't think there's any doubt that Andre Dlamini has tackled corruption. He has started the unbundling process. He's managed to reduce the Eskom debt, even though it's by a small margin, but that's a significant improvement. Managed to mobilize funding for the just energy transition. But one of his primary responsibilities was to end load shedding. Did he succeed in that?
Obviously, we still have load shedding, so he didn't succeed, and I think he concedes, you know, to that fact in the interview that he really thinks that one of his greatest disappointments is that we are still mired in load shedding, you know, as a country, and obviously there are reasons why that is the case, and obviously goes into that and he speaks about the challenges that he has actually faced as a country. So I guess we're probably maybe going to have to look at his KPIs. We're probably maybe are going to have to look at what are the clear success criteria that he actually had to meet. What are the definite key performance indicators? If it was 10 things, how many of the 10 things? And if load shedding was one of the 10, how many of the 10 things did he actually achieve? You know, of course, load shedding definitely did not succeed on it. If he had 10 other things to do, how far did it go in terms of ensuring that it delivers on the other 10? And I guess we can therefore definitely talk about success or not from that perspective, you know, but without having that information, without seeing how he has, I guess, rated on all his other KPIs, if the measurement is load shedding, then no, Andre was not successful in ending load shedding. This board has not been successful in ending load shedding. Neither has the board that I was on successful in ending load shedding. So if therefore the criteria is load shedding, then we have all failed, Clement.
Mr. Mavuso, Business Leadership South Africa CEO, I appreciate your time this afternoon.